You're gonna have your hands full of games with these collections. Klonoa is coming to Nintendo Switch.
At the time this was announced, I had not really heard of Klonoa before. I'd known about it loosely as this niche gem, but hadn't really looked into the games quite yet. This announcement would give me the proper excuse to actually change that. For those who don't know, Klonoa is a series of platformers developed and published by Bandai Namco. The series was headed by Hideo Yoshizawa, a man also notable for his work on the Mr. Driller series, as well as the NES Ninja Gaiden games. Despite the first game's terrible financial performance, it would be praised for its gameplay, visuals, and storytelling. Thus, a proper sequel would begin production and would later release in 2001. Both of these games would later get remastered and released together under the Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series on July 8, 2022. A point in my life where I had been in the thick of a massive wave of depression that had been ongoing for several months at that point. I didn't realize at the time, but this remastered collection would be a big deal for me. The second game especially. But why is that? What themes and story elements does this second game hold that helped me mentally both back then and even now to this day? Before we get started, spoiler warning for both games in this collection. I strongly recommend that you play both of them before continuing the video. Don't worry, I'll be here when you're ready. Also, we will not be covering anything outside these two games due to the concern of whether or not they are even canon, as well as due to my own lack of personal experience with them for the most part. For those who are ready, however, let's get started! Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Klonoa 2, Lunatea's Veil. Firstly, I think it's important that we lay out the general story of Klonoa 2. The game begins with the main character, Klonoa, being dropped into an ocean before being saved by a new set of faces, Lolo and Popka. They are all tasked with ringing these 4 bells throughout the kingdom of Lunatea as a means of warding off a banished darkness. Lunatea of which being a nation divided up into 4 main kingdoms. Lalakusha, the kingdom of tranquility and a realm where people can live peacefully. Joylant, the kingdom of joy, where people live in an eternal happiness. Volk, the kingdom of discord, a nation and never-ending... Oops, wrong one. Volk, the kingdom of discord, a nation and a never-ending civil war. And Mira Mira, the kingdom of indecision, a land where its denizens isolate themselves and relive their respective pasts on a never-ending loop. Unfortunately, though, that banished darkness does get resurrected. The hidden 5th kingdom of Huponia, a realm plagued by sadness and sorrow. After being taken care of, however, Klonoa would leave Lunatea with no sign of coming back. On the surface level, the plot of the game is pretty simple, but what makes it so compelling to me are all the thematic and symbolic stuff going on in the background, as well as each character's respective arcs. When I first played these games, I genuinely had no idea what the hell was going on. When the Fantasy Reverie series had came out, I played these games, and at the time I was just like, alright, I guess, and I moved on. But something felt off to me at the time. I would revisit these games a couple weeks later, and I think that's when it finally clicked for me. Despite having played this game 6, maybe 7 times at this point, I'm still constantly putting more pieces together to try and figure out what the true message of the game even is. Definitely something that I feel is supposed to be left up to personal interpretation. And that's fun, as that gives me an angle to provide my viewpoint on what's being presented here. If mine differs from yours, that doesn't mean your viewpoint is wrong, it's just how I see these things. That's part of what drives the story home for me, I feel. To understand these themes, I think it's important to establish some of the key characters of the story and how they contribute to the overall message of the game. Let's start with the main character himself, Klonoa. On the surface level, he is about what you would expect from a main character, to be completely honest. He is kind, selfless, and is always willing to protect and fight for those he cares about. However, on a more in-depth note, let's just say Klonoa has not been treated the most kindly. He watched his grandpa die right in front of him, and he was told by his best friend that everything that he experienced up to that point was all an illusion created by him before being sucked away from his home to never return. He was a child when this all happened, by the way. In this game, however, he is now a teenager or young adult, being dropped into Lunatea as his next destination. Despite all of this, he is able to put these traumatic events behind him, accept his role as the Dream Traveler, and keep pushing forward. But what exactly is a Dream Traveler, though? It is the Dream Traveler's role to stop by different worlds and deal with the nightmares plaguing them. In the first game, he is completely oblivious to this identity, as in the moment he is only doing what was right, and now is to stop Gaudius from unleashing an unending nightmare across all of Phantom Isle. Upon being dealt with, though, Hupo, Klonoa's best friend, would tell Klonoa that he is not from Phantom Isle, and that he was given false memories of them being friends before being sent back into the void. At the end of the first game, he is sucked into a vortex of some kind, while crying no less. In this game, Klonoa willingly walks away while Lunatea fades behind him, ready for the next nightmare to face off with. After the end credits, the game shows a message saying, "Good morning, insert player ID here." This implies several things. Perhaps the whole game was a dream of ours, and we got to actually see Klonoa fend off the nightmares in real time. The intros to both games do mention how people tend to forget their dreams after all, so who's to say Klonoa wasn't there helping us fend off our nightmares and we just forgot about it when waking up? Hey now, before you call me crazy for saying that, Namco themselves have literally confirmed that Klonoa is real and he's very much our friend. How can you argue with something like that? What's next, you gonna try to argue that Knights isn't real either then? Regardless though, I think that Klonoa being able to keep pushing forward despite his previous hardships, and the hand that fate had dealt him, is something that spoke volumes to me at the time. This was the kind of motivation I had needed for myself. No matter what mental hardships I may face, I am always encouraged to keep fighting and hang on for a better tomorrow. The pain you feel today is the strength you feel tomorrow. Mentalities of which that have only become a core part of myself over the years, and has helped me push through the hard times more effectively. That's not to say there won't be any hard times at all, but this mindset has definitely helped me deal with them whenever they occur. Now, you could argue that main characters of Other Affair can give off these vibes too, but I think the key difference for me though is that most protagonists end up getting a happy ending of some kind. Klonoa, in theory, never sees a happy ending, or hell, an ending in general to be honest. He is trapped in an eternal loop of visiting worlds, defeating nightmares, and then is forced to leave behind any new friends he found along the way. Klonoa is locked into this, against his will, but he has accepted it. Because of all this, I find them to be very relatable and inspiring. That's probably part of why Klonoa has become one of my favorite characters over the years. Also helps that he is generally a really chill and kind guy too, despite his hardships, and gotta say, based off that hat of his, I can confirm that this guy does in fact know ball. I also relate to him in the sense that just like Klonoa, I am also an unintentional ladies magnet. Next, let's talk about Lolo. She may be a little bit clumsy and a little bit scared too while you're at it, but she's all around a very charming character, especially when taking into account the arc that she has. Lolo is a priestess in training to become a full priestess. I'm probably gonna hella butcher this, but in context of the game's story anyway, it is the priestess's role to eventually be able to ring these bells throughout Lunatea. Lolo is able to accomplish this by supplying Klonoa's ring with the ability to fire wind bullets, thereby activating them. Upon being able to ring this first bell at the start of the game, she is given the title of a full priestess, and is asked to continue helping Klonoa ring the main 4 bells scattered across Lunatea, in order to acquire these orbs called elements, one representing each kingdom in Lunatea. It is during this journey where when we stop by Mira Mira, we learn that Lolo was often looked down upon as a failure, and that she relied on Klonoa's help to attain that full priestess status. Klonoa finding out about this destroys her so much mentally to the point that in the boss fight that happens immediately after this cutscene, she isn't there helping Klonoa on the field until she is given some much needed motivation from Popka to keep fighting. There's another thing that happens later, but I'll touch on that in just a second when we talk about Leorina. By the end of the game, Lolo has realized the importance of failing and not giving up, as she now strives to attain the full priestess status on her own terms, without any help.
Clara, Lista. Wiratto Kwopo Wopolu Ag Avrapolu Waru Kuryo Sanan Popolua Wimulua Fram Yurhi.
I'll be fine because I'm going to do my best. And you taught me that it's okay to cry as long as I don't give up. I believe that if you don't forget the sadness of this moment, we'll always be together. Some of the greatest lines of dialogue ever written. I don't cry playing games, but holy fuck, this one hit so hard for me. I've played this game and I've seen this cutscene multiple times, but I won't lie when I say this still had me tearing up on this playthrough. Upon finishing this incredibly wholesome and warm-hearted exchange, Klonoa takes his leave, looking to never come back. For me, I'd say Lolo's arc is also really effective. Keep pursuing your goals no matter how many times you might flounder. Failure is okay, as long as you keep pushing forward. It is okay to feel sad or let down sometimes. What matters is that you never lose sight of your dreams. Lolo is forever in Klonoa's debt for helping her reach this conclusion, and while she is of course sad to see him leave, she knows that whatever hardships await her, she will be able to handle them on her own. Next, let's talk about Leorina, or Leo for short. Like Lolo, she was also a priestess in training. However, impatience and anger led her to quit this role in pursuit of power. Accompanied by her cohort Tet, they become sky pirates in pursuit of obtaining the Bell's elements and bringing back the banished Kingdom of Sorrow as a means of revenge to those who damned her over the years. She and Tet act as sort of rivals to Klonoa and his team, as they constantly get in the way of his efforts of obtaining the elements, so much so to the point that Leorina even creates her own ring after analyzing Klonoa's battles. She foresaw Klonoa's arrival and spots him as soon as he arrives in Lunatea. She was ready for him to show up. She ends up succeeding in her goal of obtaining the elements, and after Klonoa pursues and confronts her, she becomes corrupted by her own sorrow. Upon beating this corrupt form of hers in a fight, she repents on her actions of trying to revive the Fifth Kingdom and proceeds to help Klonoa fend off the oncoming sorrow. It is during this scene that she also realizes just how much she had relied on her own sorrow to drive her forward. Hey, so future me editing the video right now because I actually wanted to add another detail of note here. A detail I would have never realized since it was cut from the remaster, so let's visit the original PS2 version real fast. Prior to the fight with Leorina, her eyes looked dead. No pupils, no reflections, nothing but a dead stare. That is until she's defeated by Klonoa where her eyes regain these aspects. Leorina was literally being controlled by her own sorrow the whole time, and does not come back to her senses until being defeated by Klonoa. Genuinely sad that this was cut from the remaster, especially since for me, I feel this helps clear up a little bit why all of a sudden Leorina was willing to help Klonoa after being beat. While I'm here, I also want to mention the dynamic between Leo and Lolo. To me, they sort of feel like foils in the sense that while they both use sorrow for power, they ended up with completely polar opposite outcomes and experiences. I feel that had Klonoa not stepped in to help her, Lolo probably would have also quit being a priestess, and would have gone mad like Leo did. Things that Lolo probably also realizes upon Leo's defeat here. Anyway, I think I'll pass it back to my past self now. Hope you guys enjoyed the rest of the video. Leo gets one more set of scenes in the finale, but I'll discuss that in just a moment here, as we have one more character I want to give spotlight to. Alright, one last character to tie everything together. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you, Momet. Wait, what do you mean that's not part of the script? Did we not discuss this earlier? Oh, okay, you know what? That does make a lot more sense. Okay. Okay, sorry for the confusion, you guys, but the actual final character we're going to be talking about is the King of Sorrow. I suppose you could call him the antagonist, but he isn't really evil, though. First thing I want to mention about him is that I believe that he might literally be a physical representation of Klonoa's own sadness. Like, you see the vision, right? They both have those weird, ear things. He wears a collar around his neck similar to how Klonoa did when he was younger, and he even has a similar white fur outline on his face. That's also not mentioning the fact that all of the king's cries for help throughout the game can only be heard by Klonoa himself. I think all of this can be said about Huponia in general, too. Because of the name being loosely similar to Hupos, Klonoa's friend from the last game I'd mentioned earlier, I feel that the Kingdom of Sorrow could also represent Klonoa's sadness. This can also be shown in the song that plays during the level leading up to this final confrontation, as there will be occasional leitmotifs of other songs sprinkled throughout it. Part of me thinks that Klonoa also realizes these things when he finally confronts the King of Sorrow. It is the King's goal for everyone to remember and embrace sorrow as an emotion. All the kingdoms I had mentioned earlier only live by their associated emotion and suppress all others as a result. For example, the people of Joyline only experience happiness, and the people of Volk only experience wrath and anger. In this confrontation, Leo is also here. The King of Sorrow acts like he is the only one who has experienced sadness, and as a response, Leo requests that Klonoa shows him the elements of the other 4 kingdoms. This line right here especially. Make him remember what the real world is about. This line I feel is trying to push that people cannot block off other emotions, rather they should embrace them all. Something that Leo definitely realized after the fight with her earlier. Joy, anger, peace, isolation, and sadness are a natural part of us all, and we can't neglect any emotion, no matter how much we want to. Upon being defeated by Klonoa, Klonoa then rings the kingdom's bell, thus releasing it from its banishment. The king's calls for help worked. The world, it won't forget sorrow, and no one will run away anymore. The King of Sorrow fades, Klonoa obtains the element of sorrow, and the kingdom of Huponia begins its process of being rebuilt in Lunatea. From a thematic standpoint, I think all of this represents Klonoa confronting and facing his sorrow from the last game, and releasing the king is him ultimately overcoming the sorrow, thus allowing him to move on mentally. The king's calls for help represent the lingering signs of sorrow left in Klonoa's mind, thus explaining why only he could hear them. Help of which being to ultimately release the sorrow from his inner psyche, represented by the king fading away. And Huponia being rebuilt represents everyone learning to embrace the emotion rather than burying it outright. It's revealed in the credits that the denizens of Lunatea would begin embracing the other regions rather than just theirs. For example, you can see citizens of Miramira hanging out in Joyline. It's also revealed that the King of Sorrow was resurrected? Reborn? I'm not really sure what this means. If I had to surmise a guess here, Klonoa's sadness is beginning to build up again, and this was supposed to have been a teaser for a potential 3rd game, maybe? I don't know, really. So yeah, those are some of the main characters in the story that I wanted to touch on. I'm not going to touch on every character, but these are the ones that definitely stick out to me the most. I suppose you could argue that Popka and Tat are also key characters, but outside of Popka motivating Lolo in that one scene, these 2 characters are really more so here as means of comic relief, but that's fun. So, if you've been paying attention so far, you may have noticed a pattern with the 4 characters that we just discussed. The answer which being that all of these characters have some ties to the emotion of sadness in some ways or another. I think that these lines from Klonoa I had mentioned a second ago pretty much summarizes the entire message of the game. The world, it won't forget sorrow, and no one will run away anymore. Without sorrow, there would be no challenge, no personal development or growth, and as represented by the kingdoms of the game, everything would only remain stagnant. A story that explores just how vital sadness as an emotion is, no matter how much it may hurt. Hell, all emotions in general, while you're at it, have a place in this world. According to Yoshizawa, an original concept for the game's story would have been for Klonoa to return the Phantom Isle, only this time, he goes back in time to see Gaudius's past, leading up to him being sealed away. This was considered due to the game's low budget. The only thing that made it past the scrap version was the Ark, as instead of a time machine, it's pretty much just a ship now. Crazy how you go from a simple story like that to one that, God, if I'm gonna be honest here, answers the question of what the meaning of life is. Klonoa's Ark alone carries such insane weight. Overcome any current or previous hardships so that you can be at peace with yourself in a better tomorrow. A theme that further gets emphasized by Lolo's Ark. Overcome thy sadness, never give up, and never let go of what it is you believe in. Hey, yeah, did I mention also that this is a series of platformers made for kids? And here we have a game giving out genuine life advice on how to deal with depression? Fucking insane, dude. I genuinely believe that had it not been for this game, I wouldn't even be here saying all of this right now. Prior to this game, I had viewed sadness as a hindrance to my mental health and nothing else. Now I actively embrace it. Now I know that sadness is only a driver for improvement, self-reflection, and for future happiness down the road. This is Klonoa 2, Lunatea's Veil, the game that saved my life. As I mentioned earlier, despite Door to Phantomouse's poor performance financially, it was still a game that had received a lot of praise. Following it, the series would receive a game on the WonderSwan, the sequel on the PS2, a spin-off title for the PS1, 3 GBA games, and a remake of the first game on the Wii. Official sales numbers are unknown, but according to the series' Wikipedia page, the second game would sell about as poorly as the first, and the Wii game would sell even worse than that. The latter of which probably contributing the most for the series' long absence over the years. From what I can make out, according to Yoshizawa himself on Twitter, the only reason Lunatea's Veil was even made was as a means of giving experience to newer employees, but also because upper staff had liked the first game. Ouch, dude, that's kinda fucked up, man, I'm gonna be honest. Though at the same time, can you really blame these games for selling like shit, though?
I'm Klonoa from Wind Village.
And my name is Hupo.
There was also going to be a film a few years ago, but that was also cancelled, and all that remains of it is some concept art. The series currently sits with Bandai's Twitter page often mentioning Klonoa in some format. Whether that be through marketing posts, or just straight up making Klonoa-themed items in DLC for their other games. Could it all be a tease for something down the line, maybe? I mean, hey, Summer Games Fest is only a few months away, so who knows? Maybe that'll be Klonoa's big moment. It's really sad this series has been treated so harshly over the years, because these games are fucking sick. But hey, regardless of any of that though, I'm glad that I was able to talk about a game that holds a special spot for me. Especially since Klonoa 2's 25-year anniversary was only a few days ago. So happy anniversary, King! But yeah, that's all I got, really. If you made it this far into the video, it means that YouTube didn't kill this video like it does the rest of mine, but it also means that you're a certified real one. I want to also give a spotlight to Hideo Yoshizawa for sharing some information regarding Klonoa 2's development, as he plans on posting more information with each coming Sunday. So be sure to check out his Twitter page, of which I'll leave linked in the description. I also want to give a special thanks to my man's Cartboy from Source Gaming for taking time out of his busy schedule to take a look at the script for this video and give me some advice on it. I greatly appreciate the help, especially since this is my first proper video essay after all. If you want to check him out, he writes a lot of articles based on some of his favorite characters and games, and I'll leave his stuff linked in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to consider subbing to the channel so you don't miss out on anything new, and let me know what you thought of the game's story down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.